guys, welcome to my best books of January. This month I'm like counting. I have quite a few books I really like, so I think there's 10 to go through. So I'm going to go ahead and start going through them, and I'm going to do this kind of rapidly, I hope. The first book that I read this month that I really, really liked, and I think it's the first review I posted in January or close to it, is Blood Heir by Alona Andrews, and this is the first book in the Aurelia Rider series. It does take place in the Kate Daniels world and features Julie, who is Kate's ward, as the main protagonist. I love this. I love that world anyway, so it was amazing to go back and visit it. But yeah, this was just a particularly good book. There's always a lot of action, a lot of really interesting characters. The world is amazing. The storyline was really fantastic. Pretty much I loved everything about it. So if you're a Kate Daniels fan or even just an urban fantasy fan in general, I would pick this up. I think it does have more impact if you have read the Kate Daniels series, but it wouldn't be absolutely necessary to read it in order to enjoy this book. All right, the second book I read in January and absolutely loved is The Brass Queen by Elizabeth Chatsworth. This was just a really, really good kind of humorous steampunk novel with a lot of mystery and a bit of a romance and kind of more of like a humorous, funny romance, if you know what I mean. If you are a Gail Carriger fan, I would definitely check this out because Chatworth's style reminded me a lot of Carriger, but I think it's a little better. It's just a little bit more polished, a little bit more detailed, and I like the world building just a little bit better. But lots of humor, lots of tongue-in-cheek stuff. I laughed out loud so many times. I enjoyed the characters and the adventure and the mysteries. I just really love this. So if you are a steampunk fan, definitely check out The Brass Queen. And if you are particular like kind of humorous steampunk, like Gail Carriger writes, with a little bit of romance and a lot of mystery in it, yeah, you'll enjoy this. That was a really fun one. It's probably the funnest book I read this year. All right, the third book on my list is one I had to return to the library, but that is The House in the Cerulean Sea by T.J. Klune. I love that book. I know it's been very, very popular. I picked it up to read because it's on a lot of like best of 2020 fantasy lists, and it was really good. It's just such a nice book. It's creative and interesting, and it's not like fluffy or anything, or like, I don't know. It's just a nice book. I heard somebody describe it as like a warm hug, and that is totally true, but it also includes crazy, dangerous children with tentacles and world-ending powers and stuff like that. So House in the Cerulean Sea was fantastic. I do have another Klune novel to read, The Lightning Struck Heart. I believe that's what it's called, for audiobook, so hopefully I'll be reading that soon. But I mean, that was just an amazing book, and I'm a little bit worried about reading any other Klune books because I'm worried I won't love them as much as I loved The House in the Cerulean Sea. All right, the fourth one on the list is The Magic Fish by Trinley Nguyen. This is a graphic novel, and it's just very, very well done. A lot of these books do seem to have GLBT, all the other letters included, theme. I don't know, that seems to be very popular right now, but this one, oh my gosh, the drawing in here is beautiful and detailed, and it basically goes back and forth in this boy's life. He's kind of like a early high school age, I believe, boy, or maybe late middle school age, and he is trying to figure out, like, he loves his best friend, who is a boy. He's trying to figure out how to talk to his parents about this because they don't even have words for being gay in his culture. And as he's doing that, him and his mom are reading fairy tales together. So, or he's hearing fairy tales from his grandmother. It kind of goes back and forth. And so you get to see both like traditional English fairy tales, traditional Vietnamese fairy tales, and kind of how they tie together and how they reflect what he is going through as a young man. It's all just very well done, very well tied together, and very enjoyable to read. The way things resolve is very heartfelt and sweet, and it's just one of those books that made me feel good, but was really entertaining and just really well done. So if you haven't read The Magic Fish and you enjoy like fairy tales and learn about fairy tales of different cultures and coming of age stories and beautiful drawing, I would really recommend this. It was really, really good. All right. The fifth one on my list is another one I had to return to the library, and that is The City We Became, which is the first book in the Great Cities trilogy by N.K. Jemisin. I will say that Jemisin books aren't for everybody. They're never the easiest books to read. There's always a lot of very intricate world building, and it's a pretty complex plot. And this did take some effort to read. This was not an easy to read book. But I will say I really, really enjoyed it, and I just loved the idea of it, and I loved getting to visit New York City so thoroughly. I have been there myself a couple of times, and honestly, I'm not a big city fan in general, but I really did love how, I'm going to move over a little bit so I can put pictures of the stuff like here. I really did love how it was all done. So if you are a Jemisin fan, it's very different. It's not a fantasy. It's definitely more of like an urban fantasy kind of paranormal science fiction thing. I don't. It involves parallel, universes, and it has very Lovecraftian type of tone to it at times. But I enjoyed that, so I liked it. Excuse me. All right. So the sixth one on my list is another one I also had to return to the library, so I'll put a picture over here. And that is The Black God's Drums by P. Lee Clark. I did only give this one 4.5 out of 5, so it's not a 5 out of 5, but that's just because I had read his other books, and I think they're better. It's not to say I didn't absolutely love it. This book is set in an alternate historical America during the Civil War, and involves basically something getting summoned to destroy humanity. But it was really well done again. Very strong female characters, very interesting characters, a lot of action, a very interesting historical take on the world. It is a novella, so again, I was super impressed by how much world building and characterization and story is built into Clark's novellas. It just continues to blow me away. And I did get a Master of Jin for review, so I'm really looking forward to reading that, but I'm putting it off because it doesn't come out for quite a while. So there's that one. All right, the seventh one is another one I had to return to the library, and that is The Bone Shard Daughter, the first book in the Drowning Empire by Andrea Stewart. Andrea Stewart. This was a phenomenal epic fantasy. It's been a long time since I've read an epic fantasy that was so easy to get into, so interesting, and just so engaging. Like, the characters are so personable, the story is so good, the world is so interesting, and I just loved it. Initially, you're kind of bouncing between two different characters' points of view. I think more are added in as you go. I'm trying to remember. I read this pretty early in January, but it's just so well done. Like, you never get to a character point of view and think, oh gosh, I got to read about this guy. I just loved all the characters. I love the world. I love the story. And it was so readable. Like, I never had to work to read this. I just sat down and I read it, and I loved every second of it. So if you're looking for a good new or epic fantasy series, I would definitely recommend The Bone Shard Daughter. This is another one that was on a lot of people's best of 2020 fantasy lists. So yeah, it was so good. I really liked that one. And I actually read the seventh book on my best of January list right after The Bone Shard Daughter, and then felt like I was just super spoiled with reading amazing fantasy, which I've been paying for in the last couple weeks. I haven't been reading some very good books, but so the seventh one on my list is The Gilded Ones by Namina Forna. This is a young adult fantasy, really, really good. This is really good too. It's a different type of fantasy. It does only follow the one main character named Decca. She finds out when her village is attacked that she bleeds gold, which makes her a Gilded One. And the Gilded Ones are considered like demon-born women. It only happens to young women. And through a series of circumstances, she goes through a lot. She is the protagonist that goes through the most stuff. She goes through so many bad things before a woman shows up and asks her if she would like to join a special elite guard that is meant to fight kind of the demons that have been attacking people. They're called the Deathless, I believe. And, so she joins this elite guard and trains with that. But you find out a whole bunch of things about the gods and mythology and history of the world that tie into why these young women have golden blood. There's a lot of action. I really liked that our character actually has to train to become awesome. She doesn't just instantly become awesome. So, again, very good characters, very fast paced, very fun. I mean, it's kind of a dark book because there is a lot of violence. There is a lot of I mean, these women they can die and come back to life, right? So they go through a lot. And that's the ability that they're like valued for, is the fact that they can die and come back. They go through a lot, so it is definitely a darker fantasy, but I had a lot of fun reading it. It's just a lot of action. It's very interesting and intriguing, and I like the characters. It's another one that I sat down to read and I like could not put down. And so I read this right after The Bone Shard Daughter, and while it is a very different type of fantasy, it's much more like a single POV. The story's a little bit simpler, you know, it's not really epic fantasy. I loved it just as much. It was a really nice change because I had read The Mask of Mirrors, The Bone Shard Daughter, so a lot more like epic fantasies, and then read this, and it was just a really nice change of pace, and I really loved it. So if you're looking for a good like action-packed fantasy with some cool concepts and mythology and stuff in it, and a lot of it is dark. It is dark. I'm just telling you, it's dark, and it is gory at points. But this was a really good one, and I would highly recommend it. All right. The ninth one on my list is one I also gave 4.5 stars to, but I want to include just because it's kind of something different that I don't normally read, and I really ended up enjoying it a lot, and it is a debut author, I believe, and that is Calculated by Nova McBee. Picture over here again, because I think I got it as an ebook, but I don't know what I did with my little printout, or maybe I never made a printout, I don't know. Anyways, this is about a young girl who's a prodigy in math and economics, and through a series of circumstances, she gets stolen by kind of a Chinese organized crime leader, and the crime leader is using her abilities to make a lot of money and take down, you know, a lot of good organizations and support their negative organizations. And when she gets out of the situation, she ends up discovering that the world is heading towards an economic crisis, and she's going to try to use her skills for good to basically help people, since she feels like she's hurt so many people. And the story is told in an interesting way. It alternates between her past and present, but that kind of changes as time goes on. So like it starts out when she's a little girl, and then when she's, you know, working for the Chinese crime syndicate. And then as you go on, it goes for when she's working for the Chinese crime syndicate and when she is not working for it anymore. So it kind of bounces back and forth. Again, this was just, I just like reading about child prodigies and people who just see the world very differently. So I really enjoyed this book because it is about like how this person sees the world so differently compared to everyone else, and how they can use that to their advantage, and how they get caught up in this whole scheme when they're fairly young and what they go through. So this is another protagonist that goes through a lot. But it was just very interesting, and just the discussion of like world economics and what can happen if something were to happen to the Chinese economy, like how that affects everything else in the world. There are some very nice characters in here and a little bit of a romance. So I just felt like it was a really well-balanced story that really kept me interested. It did get a little slow in the middle, which is why I didn't give it more stars. She basically ends up with a mentor when she's being held by the Chinese syndicate, and it went into a lot of detail about the lessons she learned through that. And this part got a little bit slow and was just didn't match the pacing of the rest of the novel. But aside from that, I really, really liked it, and it was kind of different. So if you're interested in like child prodigies and like world economy and even how the Chinese country works as a whole, I thought it was really, really interesting, and I enjoyed it a ton. So that's Calculated by Nova McBee. All right, the last one, the 10th book on my list for the best books of January, is the 5th volume in the Lady Mechanica series, La Belle Dame Sans Mercé. I actually had kind of stopped reading this because the 4th volume was not as fantastic as I had hoped it would be. And I was reading a lot of different graphic novel series recently, well, kind of back in November when I realized I wasn't up to date. I wasn't going to hit my graphic novel challenge. I went back and I kind of looked at graphic novel series that I had liked in the past and like why I had stopped them. I decided that, and it's a long time between books for these usually. I think between 4 and 5 was quite a gap in time. But yeah, so this was one I had really liked the earlier volumes in, and I didn't like a couple of the later volumes. So I went ahead and asked for it for Christmas and got it for my husband for Christmas. And I really liked it. I thought the story in here was a lot more cohesive than some of the other volumes. I have always really liked the illustration style in here. It's a very Victorian steampunk type of thing. And Lady Mechanica has a mysterious past. She's part mechanical woman and ends up, she's the whole like overarching storyline. She's trying to figure out her past. But she always gets drawn into these little schemes and stuff. And in this volume, she's helping her friend Crowley, who ends up involved with this Fey woman who is trying to work him to death, basically, by giving him amazing adventures. But I just love the detailed, like, artistic style. I love kind of the darker color tone throughout. And I mean, there's some cute characters in here. You've got some younger characters that want to be adventurers and stuff like that. So this is definitely would be appropriate for, like, young adult and up. And I've really been enjoying it. I realized the 6th volume also got released recently, so I went ahead and purchased that, and that showed up last week. So I think I did that in Stacking the Shelves recently, but that's my last one. So those are books I really loved this January. There were quite a few of them. I was pretty lucky that I got to start off the year with some great books. I will say the last couple of weeks I'm kind of paying for it because I've been reading some books that haven't been so great, but ups and downs. All right, well, I hope that you enjoyed the best books of January post, and that you'll be having a great month of reading and read some great books. If you have any books you really love, please comment down below. Again, I post videos every Wednesday and Saturday. My Saturday videos are usually Stacking the Shelves, and my Wednesday videos are something else. So, all right, talk to you later. Bye.